Hey there, so I'm going to show you one of the coolest notes in music, and we're going to use this idea where you take things that you're already really familiar with, like your pentatonic scales, and then just do one little tweak to make it way more interesting. So let's start by just kind of going through. This is the pentatonic scale that you all know and love. So just going up and down, that's the basic fingering pattern. It's such a useful pattern. It's used in, so many solos and stuff like that. It's a really great sounding scale. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to add this note. It's the flat 5, and it's the coolest sounding, the weirdest sounding, probably the most evil sounding of all notes. I'll explain why in a minute, but this is where it fits. It's right in the very bang center of the scale. I'm just going to do it right here. So there's the note. Okay, I'm just putting one of them in. There's a few different variations you can do, but that's the easiest way to do it. You just insert it right there on the G string. And a really easy way to think of it, it gives you that kind of like almost like a Pink Panther sound. That's a good way to think of the sound of that note. Whenever you're using that note, it has a lot of kind of soul and feel to it. I mean, I remember hearing Stevie Ray Vaughan, hearing him play those licks like a... And I was like, when I heard that, I was like, whoa, what is that? It's such a crazy sound. And, what he's doing there is he's just adding that flat 5 in there with some of the other strings pedaled over it. So basically, this note here, it's the flat 5, and when you hear it, just play it over the chord. There's an A chord. The flat 5 sounds like this. So it's got a really dissonant sound. In fact, that note was considered to be so dissonant in times gone by. That note was actually banned in some parts of the world. They considered that note to be evil and that it would summon the devil whenever you played it. So it's a very controversial note, but it's actually a great note. It's a beautiful sound. And, it has that soulfulness in it because it's this in-between note. So I'll show you a couple of ways you can use it. So the first one is just like that. You kind of just walk right through the note. Okay, the next one is, instead of actually just walking through it, you can bend to that note. Now, one of the typical kind of pentatonic bends is to bend this 3rd string here. And what you're doing is you're bending up a whole step. But there's a whole myriad of little bends that you can, micro bends that you can get in between that whole step bend, which would be like bending from here to here by bending up to the flat 5. It's very soulful. You can also slide. Just kind of throwing that note into your runs is very cool. But if you start to actually emphasize that note more, it can start to get really kind of outside. So for example, what I'm doing there is I'm putting more of an emphasis on that note. It sounds more natural when you walk through the note and you're resolving it like this. It's just like a passing note. But if you emphasize it, it can create some really interesting sounds. And you're still right there in the blues scale. But when you emphasize that note, it kind of gives it that outside kind of dissonant sound. So you can really kind of create some really crazy sounding licks just by landing on that note instead of resolving it. And you usually want to resolve it eventually, but by emphasizing that note. Again, you can do it in any key, in E. It's right there. really great dissonant sound in the key of C. Doesn't really sound bluesy, it sounds kind of crazy, but you know, you can kind of mix it into your blues licks. And you know, bending to it. So I love that sound of that flat 5. It's such a mysterious sound.